of our planet. Thank you so much.
Gracias, Nuno.
Thank you, Nuno.
Vamos ahora a
So
abrir un
it's
turno
time for
de palabras.
questions and
No tenemos mucho tiempo.
answers. We don't have much
Las
time.
intervenciones,
So
os pido
please,
por favor que no pasen,
I ask you to
cuando hagáis
be
la pregunta o algún
brief
tipo de exposición, no
in your
paséis de los 3
questions or
minutos,
remarks.
porque si
Please,
no nos vamos a alargar y
you
no va a poder
shouldn't
haber
use more than 3
mucha
minutes.
participación.
Otherwise, participation will be
¿Alguien quiere
low.
la palabra?
So, who wants to be first?
Bueno. Sí, claro, para eso es, para las preguntas.
Please tell him to use the mic.
Espera que te vamos a pasar un micrófono porque está allí.
Gracias. Si se conoce algún tipo de tecnología.
Do you know any technology to? Yeah.
Sí, ahora sí.
Sí, ahora. Que si se conoce alguna tecnología.
Do you know any kind of technology to decrease the impact of radioactive waste? And another question is, we all know what happens with uranium mining and after the end of the life cycle of nuclear plants. Which is the alternative? It's not our obligation or duty, but we must say that this is wrong and that there are other alternatives of energy sources that are not so bad. Which is the alternative to nuclear plant powers? Nuclear power plants, sorry.
As a nuclear physicist, I can perhaps answer the first question. Is there a technological solution to get rid of or convert this radioactive nuclear waste? No. There was some attempts to, it is called vitrification. In other words, you get the waste and mix up with the glass and hope that it is going to last for thousands of years. But experience show the constant bombardment of neutrons, because when you have a waste, it is not a waste, it is still acting. There are still hundreds of new isotopes being produced. And along the line, whether you put it in what they call it, steel kegs, or you put it in the mix it with the glass, so far there is no solution. And as far as I know, as a nuclear physicist, I don't think there will be any solution. The whole idea now is where can we do the installation so it is isolated from the environment. And that is also very, very far, far away from any project.
Thank you.
Sí.
The second question, is there an alternative
¿Que no te han
to
contestado?
nuclear power?
¿Cuál es la alternativa?
Is there alternative?
Hombre, la alternativa son
Yeah, the
el desarrollo y la
alternative is the
inversión en
development and
energías
investment
limpias.
of
Hay
clean
tecnología
energies.
ahora mismo ya,
There
sobre
is
todo a nivel del
technology
Estado español.
enough available in Spain.
La red eléctrica española,
The
la producción está
electrical network is
sobredimensionada. Con las energías
overflowing,
renovables
and
las que
with
hay, o
the
sea, las
renewable
nucleares
and
no representan un
nuclear
pequeño
power
porcentaje
is
de lo que
just
es la
a
producción
small share
dentro,
of
estoy hablando
the
del Estado español,
whole production
y son
in
irrelevantes y
Spain,
podemos
and they are
prescindir
not
absolutamente de
relevant.
ellas. Es
We
más,
may get rid of
esas
them.
nucleares están
Those
impidiendo
nuclear
el
plants
desarrollo de las
are
energías
hindering the
renovables
development
en
of
nuestro país.
renewable
Esa es la alternativa,
energies
las
in a
energías
country.
limpias.
That's the alternative, clean energy.
Aló. Iba a agregar una
I
cosita.
would like to add
la cual hablaremos
a
mañana
brief
en
remark.
transición
We're going to speak
energética, que
tomorrow
muchas
about
veces
energy transition.
se gasta
Many
energía de
times
manera
they
inútil.
spend
O sea, ya,
energy uselessly.
yo creo que es
I
cierto
think that it's true
para España, pero
in
para
the
todos los
case of
países.
Spain, but
Y en todo
for
caso,
the
nosotros
whole
en Francia
countries.
ciudadanos hemos
In France,
investigado
we have
ese campo.
research
Y, por
into this
ejemplo, en mi
field,
región, en
and
oeste de
in my
Francia,
region,
se
West
nos consta que
France,
se puede ahorrar
we
50%
know
de la
that
energía
we
que se
may
consume,
save
50%
50% of the
ahorrando.
energy we
Y
consume
luego,
just
claro,
by
vamos,
saving.
a llamar las
And
renovables, pero
so,
primero
yeah,
se
of
ahorra
course, we
energía
should use
de manera a todos
renewable,
niveles,
but
no
first
solamente
we
a
must
nivel,
save energy
individual,
at every
¿no?
level,
Organizándonos
individually,
mejor, pero también a nivel
organizing
colectivo,
better, but also
nivel
at the
los
collective level,
municipios de las regiones.
municipalities,
Ahí hay
regions.
fuentes de ahorros
There you have
tremendos.
sources of savings that are huge.
One more. As you remember, I mentioned about the Japanese example. As he mentions, that especially in Europe, and when the Fukushima blew up, I was accidentally in Istanbul. There was a national Japanese TV came, and we discussed. They asked me, what do you say to Japanese people in the light of what happened in Fukushima? I said again, conservation, conservation, conservation. And I said, if they cut the half of those big lightnings around, you can see from the space the Tokyo, Osaka. I said, just cut half of it. Just to cut half of it, you don't need the nuclear power. And that's exactly what happened now. Since 8 years, they learn how to save the energy, and Japan is now, I think, third after Spain and China in renewable energy. It just happened in 8 days. I mean, 8 years.
Sim, olá. Eu queria também contestar esta
I would like to answer this last question. Tomorrow we're going to speak about the energy transition. I would explain more into detail. In Portugal, we don't have a nuclear plant. Our production is focused on big firms, and there should be a boycott against these centralized production firms. Tomorrow I will explain how these firms, from the thermal point of view, hydric point of view, or even eolic, they have big infrastructures. We should block the centralized production. I have no doubts about that. I would like also mention an example of the situation we have. It's not as similar as Japan. Europe, they are pretty nuclearized. In France, for instance, some 70% of electric power has a nuclear source in France. It's a situation which, with a question like yours, puts difficulties. But in situations like in Brazil, we have just 2% share of production, with 2 plants on a third that would increase to a 3%. Why do they bring these enormous risks and catastrophic threats with a new plant, and then the whole problem of the already stored waste? They don't know where to place it. It's a big problem. Why start again when you can have different sources? In the Brazilian case, solar energy, eolic energy, wind energy. it's already substituting, replacing. You just have to fix the systems. It's more than 3%. This is for countries that rely a lot. It's difficult, but for Brazil, this is such a crazy idea to introduce further nuclear plants. These are like bombs of production of waste and plutonium, like somebody said. So, thank you.
Muy bien.
Well,
Sí, vale. Bueno, mi formación es como
my training
nuclear.
I'm not a nuclear engineer. My training is just another field of engineering. But to me, the Chernobyl accident really was a shock to me. And after that, I started to learn about nuclear power, and I have learned about the kinds of reactors, what the nuclear industry says about waste, reproducing reactors that produce more fuel than they spend, and the whole nuclear problem, but mostly nuclear accidents. So my question is, throughout this time, I realized about the danger after Chernobyl of radiation, ionizing radiation, and its effects on human beings. So we are living in a miracle power, because the space is full of ionized radiation. We cannot travel to Mars because we should build a lead ship. Otherwise, we cannot protect the astronauts. So it's such a stupidity that we are placing these ionizing radiations on Earth because of the danger to life they imply. So my question is, the meaninglessness of using this because of the danger on population, is this due to a lack of information, of training? So the solution to this danger wouldn't be the training, the information of the citizens about ionizing reactions, about the energy of the atom. What do you think? Is it about information, about training?
¿Queréis alguien contestar?
Does anybody want to answer this question? My opinion, of course, it's a lack of information, but the Spanish society is mostly against nuclear power. The polls say that they are against. A majority is against. That's the postponing of new plants was this decision was made after the Harrisburg accident and the huge mobilization that happened in this country during the 80s. At the beginning, during that period, the majority was against, and afterwards the media wouldn't speak about it, even though they're all the time. You have accidents everywhere. In these old plants, in Vandellós, for instance, there are water leakages, and it's been stopped for 2 weeks now. And do you listen to anything about that in the media? No. But, well,
¿Tú quieres contestar?
May I answer this question? No, just to say that this issue of information awareness is key. I'm speaking of Brazil. The nuclear lobby in Brazil has brainwashed the people about the fact that electricity produced by nuclear plants is the cleanest, cheapest, and richest way of producing electricity. The youth say, no, it's... even the younger people say, why are you against? It's cheapest and safest. It's not true. This is because of the propaganda. About the ionizing radiation, people, they don't know what it is. I built this device for measuring radiation in France, and sometimes I carry it with me. And in a trip I did to Cordoba, I carried the device with me during the flight, and there is some 0.1213, and in the plane from Paris to here is 2.32. So I'm receiving this cosmic radiation, and if I ask the passengers, do you know that you are being hit by this radiation? Do you have some stop to decrease the radiation? They don't know, they don't even know that they are being hit by this radiation, and they don't know the rules about flying periods for safety and health reasons. They don't know anything. So the information issue is the most key and important issue here.
One more word to that. Politically, there was never anything happening without pressure from civil society. That's our experience with the anti-nuclear movement in Germany. And at the moment, for example, the nuclear industry is trying to get onto the Friday for Future movement. We have a lot of experience with that. There's a lot of pro-nuclear people in Germany, I will talk about it tomorrow, that are trying to, like Chico mentioned, to give them the wrong information. And this is very important because they think that it could be a solution. You know, we in our generation, we had the threat of nuclear power, and we were fighting against this. For the younger generation, it's now a threat of climate change, and there are some people that present nuclear power as a solution, and so this is our duty, our very important duty, to inform the younger generation about it. That's what I think.
Para agregar nada, me parece que tiene que ver también con el nacimiento de la energía nuclear, ¿no? Que nació maldita porque nació para la bomba y nació del ocultamiento. Y eso me parece que no cambió durante estos 60 años, ¿no? Ese lobby nuclear del que tanto hablamos influye sobre las agencias de energía del mundo. Cuando ocurrió la crisis de Fukushima, el propio
when the Fukushima crisis happened, the Prime Minister of Japan, Naoto Kano, himself said
algo que se llamaba la aldea nuclear, que era un lobby poderosísimo dentro de Japón, capaz de sacar funcionarios, presionar, hacer campañas públicas, denigrar a las personas. Imagínense si un primer ministro pudo decir eso, lo que puede suceder con el resto de la población, ¿no? Esa es la gran batalla que tenemos, que es ese lobby que influye en los medios de comunicación, porque está ligado a lo bélico, y eso es imposible de sacar
to war, to the military. So you cannot get rid of them. So that's the key. How do we link that so-called peaceful nuclear energy that was born out of the scientific, most secret scientific project, Manhattan Project, and that's where we are, still there.
Yes, as an addition, I would say nuclear lobby wouldn't be successful unless they told lies. They must say like it will be an employment opportunity. For example, in Turkey, in Sinop, the government has not been investing in that city for years, for decades, and now they are promoting nuclear energy as an employment opportunity. So people are forced to be in it. But we must tell the truth what has been going on with nuclear projects. So Turkey has no nuclear technology, and think about the language problem. Japanese will establish one, Russian will establish one, and then Chinese maybe. The oral declared one is in it may be by Chinese. So it will be like United Nations of nuclear in my country. So it's not possible to create an employment opportunity with that kind of new technology for Turkish people who has no knowledge also about nuclear.
Also to add, it's very important to know that nuclear accidents will occur. It's not something we can avoid. It's a question of it's not if, it's when and where. And for our people, we already know the impacts from uranium mining and, of course, the Trinity explosion. For the work that I do, one of the things that we find, one of the things we started is a radiation monitoring project. And so for us, everyone here, everyone who's concerned about nuclear should have a Geiger counter and should be doing monitoring of their communities. I think it's imperative that people know what is the background level of radiation in your community, because if there is an accident, you need some proof of what was the levels before the accident. So this includes sampling water and soil and plants and whatever you can afford. But I think it's important to know that we are all here to prevent nuclear accidents by stopping the nuclear industry. But in our community, one of the things, because the nuclear, everything nuclear was born in secrecy. That's part of how it all started, and the language that's used by the government. It's designed so people will not want to learn about nuclear. So it's important for us to make it simple and easy, and if possible, fun to understand, to get involved and to learn about it. Because when we talk about the temporary waste dump in New Mexico, the transport that would be used from all the nuclear power plants is the train. And when the railroad companies found out about this, they did not know what the impacts from the radiation would be. And they came out publicly saying their workers are not prepared, they're not trained. And also the train tracks are not even ready for this type of transport. So education is important, training is important, but the idea is prevention.
We're going on. Carlos, Raquel, anybody else? Sandra, Carlos, Raquel. In that order, and no more people because we're out of time here. Somebody, anybody else?
Pues como queráis. ¿Tú quieres también la palabra? Vale.
Bueno. Antes que nada, también queríamos daros las gracias.
Before anything, I would like to thank you for organizing this forum, because we are speaking of the need we have to speak of our anti-nuclear movements and thinking about we may get rid of them. Thank you for this effort and for telling us what you're going to do. And the question is very short. Gunther has spoken about that. Even though we've been fighting for 30 years, how can we create more alliances with Fridays for Future movement, which is involving engaging the youth, and they are not speaking against nuclear power. So how can we create this alliance?
Sometimes those alliances create themselves. You know, we had a funny story. There is a minister of it's one of the countries in Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia, and there's also this company I was mentioning, RWE. They are having big lignite coal mines, and also they have nuclear power plants still running. And this minister's proposal was, in connection with Tihange and Doel in Belgium, to shut down. To propose to the Belgian government to shut down these two power plants, and we could sell them the coal power, from West Germany, from this company. And since then, right away we had a big event in front of his house, in the House of Government, and since then we are working together with the anti-coal movement in Germany, really intense, because it's not only a question of nuclear power. It was mentioned also it's a question of declining the energy we use, and it's a question of how we as society would like to live. I mean, as the next maybe decades will show. That's why we are very good connected with the Friday for Future people, and get this generation supported. So connect wherever you can.
Anyway, we're working with them. There is a platform here that is meeting 2020 Rebellion for Climate with all kinds of collectives throughout Spain, Extinction Rebellion, and the youth Fridays for Climate. So that's where you talk, where you discuss about everything. I think it's a wonderful platform to convey the anti-nuclear message to younger generations that are now fighting for the future and fighting for climate.
About climate crisis, I would like to add, we know that there are some, we must think that there are some new risks in the world for nuclear power plants. Fukushima showed us that the tsunami, after earthquake, there was a tsunami. In the Fukushima nuclear power plant, the most effective factor was earthquake. The meltdown happened when earthquake came out. But tsunami shows us that in the future we may have some thunders or tsunami or such kind of climate crisis related big events, and they are much more risky for nuclear power plants. We had Irma experience. Remember that in US last year, I think Irma and Harvey big typhoon caused a dangerous situation for the nuclear power plants, and civil society begged their governments to close, to shut down them off. But they didn't accept it. Instead, the owners of the nuclear power plants, the operators, they insisted on working them in order to prove the society that even in that time, in that thunder situation, nuclear power plants can be working. So they created another risk by not stopping them. So in the future, the nuclear power plants should be considered with new risks. So we must tell this to society.
Now the floor is to Bernard. I'm going to answer two questions then. Just would like to say about the last questions, the joining forces with the youth, every time it happened, we got close to the youth, saying that also the air you breathe has this tendency to get heated, and it also carries always more radioactive elements. It's also about the quality of air, the water we drink, and the youth, they understand that very well. And we try to engage with them in the marches because we don't want any intergenerational conflict here, because they may say, you've been using that energy and what is left now? What should we do? You don't have any real solution. So we must struggle together with them to avoid further pollution. That's obvious. So in the panel, everybody, this banner says it, because we don't need electric energy for everything in life. We must use energy otherwise, differently. So to answer the question about awareness, just two brief remarks. First, 30 years ago, in my village, with my comrades, we had to face a nuclear dam project. The people were peasants, they didn't know anything about radioactivity. The state agency showed up with beautiful documents. There will be no problem. We're gonna use the steel cylinder for security. They didn't explain the consequences after the years about these containers. The radioactivity could reach the water and pollute the food chain. They never explained that. So some of us, veterinary, my friend veterinary, myself as a physic, I made a tour of the villages with a measuring device for people to listen to the disintegrations, because that's the difficulty, because you cannot see, you cannot smell radioactivity. It's not easy to see. So we must use tools, specific tools, for the public to understand. Of course, there was movement, there was a struggle, the project was refused, but now, 30 years after, the same project is being promoted by the government elsewhere in France, with the same problems, with no new solutions, and we are still fighting against that with the help of these measuring devices. But it's not enough. In my small collective in the west of France, what we are currently doing is measuring the tritium in rivers, because we know that even without accident, a nuclear reactor emits tritium, not just tritium, many other elements, in huge numbers. And last week, in a river, we have measured 15 times the normal rate from former weeks. Something has happened. So with this, we want to raise awareness in the region, and we do know that we use devices, like Chico said, we do water tests, we send it to laboratory, because in France at least we have 2 independent laboratories, independent from the nuclear lobby, ACO and the other one, and we send the water test and plants and everything to those laboratories, and that's where they do the tests that are unrefutable, they are safe. So now we must gather funding to allow this test to go on. So I was advising my comrade Christian that lives in Argentina next to a reactor to do the same work. It's it's costly, but it is worth, because that would explain why in the repression in Bas they found 3-eyed fish. There should be a reason for that. So we must gather evidence, and that's the way we will raise awareness.
Anybody knows what the tritium is? I tell you what it is. It is an isotope of a hydrogen. When it is released into the atmosphere or leaked into the water, our body, for millions of years of accustomed to in the air, H2, that's the typical hydrogen, 2 hydrogen. But when you release the tritium, which is very aggressive electron emitter, and it lasts 12.3 years. Our body doesn't recognize whether the air you are breathing has a 2 hydrogen or 3 hydrogen. We don't know. We are not involved. And if it is in the water, or if it is in the milk, if it is in your vegetable, our body again doesn't separate H2 with H3. And that is very big problem now all over the world. And a tritium release over 1 year in a 1 megawatt typical reactor is 1,000 times more than all the isotopes that has created in 1 year time. Thank you.
For the question about the youth, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a friend of mine started a college course. It's called Nuclear New Mexico. And so we have some of the students that attend this class, they've learned about the issues of nuclear, the history, and it really made them upset, and they wanted to do something about it, so they joined our organization. So this is one way that we got youth involved, is to have direct access to the college students. And if you can do this, maybe college students are great, but it needs to happen at a much earlier age, maybe middle school or high school. And another way that some young people are getting other young people involved is to do concerts and music. And my friend who created this class, her name is Eileen. We co-founded an organization called the Nuclear Issues Study Group, because in the United States, the anti-nuclear movement is a majority older white men over 60. And it has its own problems of patriarchy, misogyny, and it's just not fun. And it's very problematic because within the environmental movement there is also a lot of racism. And so in order to get young people involved, instead of trying to change this old movement, we just started a new organization. And so we are women-led. We focus on including people of color. We're very, as much as possible, include young people, new activists, and the queer community. So, thank you.
So, new questions, please, Carlos.
Sí, buenas tardes. Lo primero que quería era pedir disculpas.
Good afternoon. Sorry to Leo and Gunther because they were in Cuenca and I couldn't meet them because we weren't in Cuenca. Leona and Gunther, sorry. Hopefully you were comfortable in Cuenca and welcome to our country. It's been said that nuclear disasters are a problem. There's always been a problem. But we have the problem of waste. Regardless of the fact of whether there are new accidents, we'll have to deal with those waste for hundreds of years. I think this is the greatest environmental threat now and in the future. Paradoxically, what we are witnessing, and we were speaking about that, I was participating in the struggle against the nuclear dump in Cuenca. We weren't able to be present in the political agenda. So my proposal for here tomorrow is that we should act. I know lobby is not a good word, but we should go inside the institution, the International Energy Association, Euratom, regulatory board, the Spanish one, where we had already a person there that is under threat of being ousted. We should be present in all regulatory bodies about nuclear energy because the pro-nukes are a majority there, so we should be able to get in. And a specific question for Leona, the Yucca Mountain. We were thinking that it was a stop project, but I read that Trump wants to start it again, this great storage facility. What can you say about that?
Yes, it's not stopped. In the United States, there is the nuclear waste policy. And this is the only waste dump that is written in the United States law is Yucca Mountain. So it still exists by law. And like I said, the state of Nevada and the people are fighting it, and it will not accept waste as long as people are fighting it. But technically, it is part of the law. And what is happening in Congress, they are trying to continue Yucca Mountain to fund it. And right now, the temporary dump that we are fighting is not legal. It's not part of the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. In fact, the law says you cannot have a temporary dump unless there is a permanent one that is open and operating. And so in Congress now, there are bills to try to change the law to say you can have both the temporary dump, or CIS, and a permanent dump, which is Yucca. And so even though the temporary dump is not legal, in Congress they just voted 2 weeks ago to put money into the temporary dump. And so every year there is always, every time there's a budget, a national budget, it usually includes Yucca. So we are always watching the budget because we want to try to stop funding for Yucca and funding for CIS, but nationally, the nuclear waste problem is getting a lot of attention because there are many reactors closing. There's a lot of old reactors that try to continue and extend their license, but there's many that are closing, and the communities want to get rid of the waste. So there is more pressure now to move the waste out of those communities. One nuclear power plant is on the beach, and the waste is stored 100 feet from the ocean. This is San Onofre. And in California, California, they have many, many Congress people. In New Mexico, we only have 5 representatives in Congress. So they have much more power and money. The people are saying, move the waste, get it out of here. So move it to New Mexico. And so some people, they think New Mexico wants it. We don't want the waste. But just 2 weeks ago, there was a vote in Congress to fund the temporary dump, and someone tried to add an amendment to fund also yucca, but that amendment did not pass. So this year, the issue is not yucca, but it's the temporary dump. However, both are still problems, yes.
Bueno, voy a dar las 2 palabras que hay y nos vamos, entre otras cosas, porque me están diciendo
more remarks, and we should be going because we have
mañana
to
continuamos, mañana vamos a tener todo el día desde las 10 de la mañana para debatir, para
clean
plantear
everything. We'll
problemas
have time tomorrow to discuss, to pose problems, interesting workshops. And then I remind you,
no tenga ticket para la cena, para el lugar donde
those without
hemos
ticket
reservado,
for
que pase por recepción, que ahí se dan los tickets para la cena y para las comidas.
for lunch and the rest
Raquel,
of
que tiene
meals, you
la
should have your
palabra
ticket. Raquel?
No se te oye.
Necesitamos el micrófono para poder hacer la traducción.
Well, I was saying that thank you to everybody for your wonderful presentations. And the first reference for Gladys del Estal to acknowledge those people. She was killed, but many other people during the dictatorship in Spain, where they wanted to install 38 nuclear plants. Only 10 were installed. I want to remind of Mario Gaviria, Gladys, Peche Santa Maria's activist in Galicia, and many other social movements. And after said that, in Lemoyne there was another factor, ETA terrorist group using the violence as a mobilization. As a Greenpeace representative, I'm against all that, and I would say that any civil movement should always use peaceful means. And also, after listening to you, we must to end of thousands of nuclear warheads, nuclear reactors still operating, rivers and ground and soil that are polluted. The task is so huge, but I want to be positive because we had lots of nuclear warheads, we now have less, and the nuclear industry also is declining. They also have problems, and I would like to speak about that. Since Chico entered into activism with 80 years old, I'm so amazed. We went from some 400 to some 23 less. There are always less reactors. I could give more numbers. In China, they have installed some 45 gigawatts, half of which are renewable, and little nuclear plants. And now some questions. I'm going to name the people I want to answer specifically, just with the goal of just one people per question. So we don't use so much time. In the case of China, they are not just funding projects for Brazil. In the case of the UK, Hitler Point, EDF, they have China behind. In Argentina, you have also China behind, since they are not installing power plants. Which is your opinion about this? Which is the geopolitical analysis would you do about these bets? This is for Chico. And also, Areva is in bankrupt and had to be bailed out, and now they face a very fucked up situation because the dismantling of the reactors, of the updating of the set of reactors in France, who I am gonna bail out? The question is for Bernard. How do you like this issue? Where do you see the black spots? Because the nuclear industry has lots of them. What's the problem with there are huge global threats against the world, climate change. United Nations in '92 created a board about climate change, the great threat about biodiversity. We have the Biodiversity Global Convention, but the United Nations, there is another body, International Organization of Atomic Energy, that does the contrary. Its mission is to defend nuclear power. That's where maybe the problem is. We should even scrap it or change its foundational principles. And I don't know whether the Fridays for Future, the younger people, maybe we're not so young anymore, may push along those lines. Germany, one of the key issues is that they are grabbing as a perfect alibi to the defense of climate change. This is so clear that the International Energy Agency saving their ass. They explain that it is not a competitive energy, so states should bail it out because they're gonna be useful for climate change. And since you are in that campaign in Germany, maybe there is some hope that the Greens are now the second force in the European elections. Do you see any hope? Which is your analysis of that electoral result in Germany about in this regard? And my questions are for Nuno about Almaraz, just to remind that the agreement of the firms and the governments, there is a frame in the National Plan for Climate and Energy where they say that nuclear plants may use in between 2025 to 2035 is not something that allows for compensations. But if they get the license from the government, I'm optimist because there's still room for struggle. And the agreement between the electrical firms is just saving Endesa's ass because they have accounting problems. And Iberdrola has swallowed it, and they have reached an agreement. But this 40 million euros is the limit to their investment. And after some recommendations, Almarat is not going on because of economic problems. So there is a road ahead to fight. We are neighbor countries. We are supported by different conventions. We have the right to have public participation. I'm not 3 years is not enough. I want it to be closed in 2020. And this is another question. The comrade from Turkey was speaking about the declarations of environmental impact, where you don't have. I don't know if the rest of the European countries may have the right to request this from Turkey. So congratulations for all your contributions. I have learned a lot, and I learn every time I listen to you. So just to close, whoever wants to answer, we should be wrapping up. Bernard, just about the financial situation of the nuclear system in France, it's catastrophic. Many French people, they don't realize, but they will soon, because in the beginning of June, the energy bill is going to have a 6.5 increase, and the people thinking that electric energy was cheap are going to realize that it's the contrary. But for anti-nuclear people, we've been saying this for years. EDF, the firm, has had to swallow the Arriba, the competing firm. Also, the taxpayers have paid. So we may say that EDF has some 35 billion euros debt, but actually it's double. And furthermore, we're going to have to pay for this nuclear dump that will cost some 25 billion euro. Moreover, because of old reactors, they calculate that EDF should invest some 1,000 billion euros for. So EDF is going bankrupt, and during next weeks, the government wants to renationalize the nuclear part of EDF and privatize further the renewable part of EDF. So we are reaching a point in which losses are going to be paid by the French citizens, and myself, I don't buy energy from EDF. Since many years, I will have to pay for that. We're going to denounce this and raise strongly our voice against that, but they still have the goal of keeping the nuclear sector operating because the lobby is stronger than politicians. I think that this situation is not going to last for long, because the myth of clean energy, the myth of cheap energy, and the myth also of energy profit politicians, those myths have fallen. They say, don't you shouldn't care. But now, enough is enough of lies. I don't know what will happen, whether EDF will lead the French state to bankruptcy. I don't know, but the situation is gonna get more and more critical.
Pensando en lo que decía Raquel,
Thinking about what Raquel was saying, I think that is an interesting idea. Maybe as an idea, we may write a document with 3 or 4 chapters along these lines to send to the international bodies. I think that we have comrades like a nuclear physics, people like Chico, whoever, or comrades, female comrades, may present that document. And somehow we may have a strategy towards the global media. That's a proposal.
En mi cuenta me olvidé de Ink Point.
I forgot them. The French state promised to pay 16 billion euros to them.
German politics. First, I would like to say to a question, because of the hope. I think there's always hope. And if you see the situation in Germany, the Greens, they were rising, but also the populists, the right wings, they are rising. At least the German AfD, they are denying climate change. So we need to watch how they, Salvini and Marine Le Pen, how they put themselves up in the European Parliament. We always used to have a pretty good connection with politicians in the European Parliament, but it's mostly for having special questions to the European Commission. There's, for example, in the moment, there is, as you mentioned, the United Nations, that I didn't know before. There is a United Nations body, United Nations European Economic Commission for Europe. And they put out a paper, it's called Redesigning the Uranium Pathway. Redesigning the uranium pathway. We have to compare the danger from climate change with the danger from uranium mining and all this front end of nuclear chain. And if we do that, at the moment, they say, we are in a totally different situation. So climate change, big threat. Front chain of the nuclear power, uranium mining, totally different situation. So this is something I also have made connection with people from the European Parliament, but as we have to wait until they are set up, it's always very important to be in good contact with the politicians and push and ask questions at one point, but the economic thing, like Areva, for example, it's not very well known to many people. And it's also, we go back to the information story, if we would have led the whole nuclear power only to the market, we would never have nuclear power. Never. Because they didn't want it. The big companies in Germany, they refused to develop nuclear power plants because it's not economic at all. So this is also something we have to shout out, you know, because with the climate change, what they are doing, again, they want our money. You know, special. I mean, they get it from France, from EDF, and it's all our money. And we also have in our paper in this campaign that written because we are a little bit scared. For example, the Green Climate Fund. Our Minister of Environment, when we met in Poland in Katowice, she was telling about how Germany will double its donation to the Green Climate Fund, and if the nuclear industry is able to get in the rule book as a green energy, then they theoretically could get access to this money. So this is something we really have to be aware of and fight.
Now the floor is to which questions were still to be answered?
Desta vez foi a Raquel que acabou muito.
Raquel spoke very fast about things I didn't understand, but I understood Almaraz is a complicated problem and something we assume were thinking about Almaraz should be closed first and then the next will fall afterwards. Then the government changed in Spain and then they said that in 2020 Almaraz was to be closed, then 2025 and then 2028. This happened after the Foreign Affairs Minister of Spain and the Minister of Environmental Minister Portugal, they said the same. The Spanish minister said 2028. We are not assuming this as something certain. Different statements from Spanish response, we should wait. Because after all, there is a very sensible political context. Spain had elections in April, Portugal in October, and I think we are all expecting what will happen in both countries. We must fight for an evaluation of environmental impact on any project, because governments know that this, what happened was a farce. Spain did a consultation, the government decided, and then when the Portuguese spoke, they said, well, it's already decided, you may speak. So it was a farce. A real impact evaluation, if you remember, in the case of the Balboa refinery, that they wanted to build it in Barros in Portugal, there was a huge struggle, and you all told us that the Portuguese position was key, because there was a public consultation and many sectors in Portugal, tourism, real estate, they exerted a pressure on Portuguese government to declare against it. And Portugal didn't want this refinery. And Spain there are many factors, economic crisis, the protest throughout Spain, Andalusia, Spain, in Portuguese as well. Everybody was saying from the top that is to be done for sure, and it wasn't for sure. So the priority for our organization is for trans-border environmental impact assessment.
Yes. About environmental impact assessment, your question was, and the reactions of Europe, for example, because we are neighbors. We are not so far. Even Chernobyl affected Turkey from 1,000 kilometers. Yeah. So before this environmental impact assessment was erased, and before this strategic environmental assessment, we had an environmental impact assessment, and it was highly criticized by Europe, by Rebecca Harms from Greens, European Parliament Secretary she was, and also from the even International Atomic Energy Agency highly criticized this project, but the reply of the government was not so friendly. It was just, this is our job. It's, nobody will say anything. Nobody is able to say anything. So we will continue our project. The answer was like that.
One point. As you may know, there are two conventions in the world: Paris Convention and Vienna Conventions, and both conventions call for third-party responsibility. So, to give you a question, as you know, Russians want to build another PVR 1200 in Kaliningrad. And the idea that this project is to sell electricity to Europe. But the transmission lines go over Luxembourg. And the Luxembourg government as we want a perfect, internationally recognized, independently done environmental impact assessment. So as a neighbor, they have a right to ask. In Turkish situation, we are trying to get all the neighbors, but they are quiet. You know what's going on in Syria, Iraq. Our hope is Greece. As a neighbor, you can challenge the project. You have a right to do it. And it's an international convention.
Yes, I will say, you know, Aarhus and Espoo Convention. So Turkey still insists on not signing these two conventions, although we as social society, we push our government and ask for it, because you know there is Metsamor in Armenia, and it's creating a great threat for us. Turkey border, there's a city just 16 kilometers away from Metsamor, and there are some rumors that radiation has been leaking, because you know radiation it comes out from nuclear power plants, from the cooling tower. So our government still doesn't sign it. And for Akkuyu, Cyprus is just 90 kilometers away. European Parliament Secretary also pushed to have Cyprus in the process, because they need to get some more information. They will be directly affected from Turkey in case of an accident, but still no answer. No, our government makes no explanation about these risks of the projects. They don't even accept that there's risk.
Le voy a pasar la palabra a Chico y terminamos.
So now the word is for Chico, and we have to go.
Vale, mañana seguimos.
And tomorrow we will go on. It's going to be very interesting.
Bueno, entonces
I guess your plan was for one person to answer to each of your questions. The problem with your question is that I didn't understand it well, so I'm not going to be able to understand it. You said that I had 80, no, 87 now. I listened twice here about the need to articulate, international articulation, a step forward not just holding meetings, but arrange things to articulate, to coordinate, to get out of here more articulated. We have learned a lot, but we should get out more articulated. So I would like to propose tomorrow, we have many things to listen to attend. I'm going to choose this, we're going to separate each other. I would like to propose that at least the members of this panel coming from different places and situations may have a meeting at that point to study, to discuss about possible articulations. I was thinking that of all the things said here, there are many specific, precise things that we may agree about a position. We should ask for this, we should reclaim this, we should agree upon a set of things about which we must work together. And since we have a little time available, hopefully at lunchtime, after lunch, we may meet at least the panelists of today. I don't know where we're going to have lunch. Can we have lunch together there? Yeah, you could share the same table. If you all agree, we gather together at lunchtime, trying to identify what could we do together now regarding to the different topics and issues that have been raised today. And I'm 87, so I'm in a hurry because the challenge ahead is really, really hard. So we're closing today. Thank you to everybody for your attendance, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.